The succession contest isn't a war that can be won on the battlefield. It can only be fought and won in the minds of the tacticians participating, such as Karapika, one of the most gifted strategists of his generation. However, there is one man who can rival and even surpass Karapika's intellect, and that is Balsamico Might, often referred to as Sergeant Might, which is fairly intimidating, and currently serving as Prince Benjamin's captain of the guard's close advisor, and quite frankly, he is the man pulling all of the strings within Benjamin's faction and currently controlling the succession contest as we know it. Usually when I describe this event, I call it a battle between the 14 princes, simply because it's easier than describing the reality of the situation. But what Karapika is to 14th Prince Wobble is what Might is to 1st Prince Benjamin. He is the true force to be feared here, and he may have just made a big mistake that is going to change the landscape of this contest. You probably recognize his face, but few realize just how integral this man has been to this point. He is not only Prince Benjamin's most trusted advisor, but also good friend. You can even see them working out together from time to time, as bros do. And Might is also apparently a qualified lawyer because he argued on behalf of Prince Benjamin during the court case after Camilla tried to murder him. And at this stage, I should also say that he is hilariously short. Balsamico Might standing up is shorter than Benjamin is sitting down. I mean, to be fair, Benjamin is the big dude, but these other bodyguards standing around him certainly aren't, and Might is dwarfed by them as well. I point out the shortness because you wouldn't notice it outside of these extremely wide panels. And that's because of how Might carries himself. He is not to be messed with. And he even has the authority to put 1st Prince Benjamin in his place. Not many people can command the highest ranking prince without severe punishment, but he's one of them. And this control is how Benjamin has remained the frontrunner. From the moment the contest began, what Benjamin did is he ripped his shirt off as he was filled with bloodlust to kill all of his siblings. Benjamin is not a patient man, and he has a general inability to look too far into the future. Benjamin isn't unintelligent by any means, but he definitely falls more into the stereotype of the brawny guy. Every time something happens in the succession contest, Benjamin asks, why did it happen? And then Mike gives him a near perfect answer every time. So they really are a straightforward combination where one is all brains and one is all brawn. However, it's not quite that simple because Might's assessment of 1st Prince Benjamin is he's impulsive and prefers shortcuts, so he tends to be misunderstood. But if we readily reason with him and offer information, he always makes sound judgments. Being both flexible and stern, he is the only one who can lead this still developing country into becoming a superpower, which I like because Might actually believes that Benjamin would be the best king to lead Karkin into an era of prosperity. And that's not a trivial detail because most princes have bodyguards who do not believe that their assigned prince would be the best. And some actively hope that their princes don't win. Some have even wished for the deaths of their princes like Theitawitz Sridnik and almost all of Karcho's guards and maids prior to her actual death. But this is more than just loyalty for the good of the nation. This is also an issue of family. The Karkin princes are an official family, but outside of the twins, Karcho and Fugetsu, they all treat each other more like colleagues. And so what some princes do is go on to build their own found families, like Tyson and her cult, where she gives everyone a fun identity to act out. But in the case of Benjamin, his soldiers are his family and they feel the same towards him. This isn't just a matter of militaristic loyalty. His soldiers are not pawns to advance Benjamin's ambition, they're his brothers. And this is on full display in the Benjamin Baton Nen ability, whereby the powers of his fallen brothers are directly inherited by Benjamin himself as he vows to carry out their will. And the closest bond of all is with Brother Might. And he does a lot of heavy lifting in this dynamic, particularly when it comes to Nen. Prince Benjamin is of course a Nen user and does possess an envious quantity of aura. However, his theoretical knowledge is what Twitter would describe as rather mid. And so Benjamin's secret weapon is Might. Might has highly advanced knowledge of very precise areas of Nen, such as the first come first serve rule of manipulators, which is how manipulators counter other manipulators by manipulating themselves first, which cancels out any potential that the opposing manipulator has. A great example of this is Shalnok's autopilot ability. When this is active, Shalnok is effectively immune from any form of pure manipulation because he's already called dibs on himself. And this is a very high level concept. I'm honestly astounded that Might has this depth of knowledge, particularly considering that he doesn't have the formal Nen training that the Hunter Association provides. My guess would be that he and the rest of Benjamin's soldiers have conducted endless experiments with their own abilities, because there's quite a wide range of them, and they've discovered these rules along the way. But for an example of Might's intellectual value, on the first day of the voyage, he correctly deduced 2 of the 3 rules for the Guardian Spirit Beasts, simply by analyzing Benjamin and from the reports of the incident with Wobble and Karapika. And this was a massive deal, because until Karapika decided to try and implement a stalemate by publicly announcing the existence of both Nen and the Guardian Spirit Beasts, Benjamin's faction had an insurmountable advantage, and had it stayed that way, this contest would probably be over by now. The succession contest is like signing up to a game without being told the rules. You're given a board, you're given some pieces, and you've got to figure out the mechanics of the game through trial and error. However, when the error means death, it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity for trial. And Balsamico Might was able to figure out 2 of the 3 primary rules scarily easily. His theoretical knowledge is infinitely deeper than that of Benjamin. He also frequently corrects and even challenges Benjamin's assessment of Nen-related events, and it's often like watching a school teacher trying to guide a troubled student. And he is a colossal threat because without ever having met him, Might has figured out that Kurapika is an extremely problematic Nen user. With all of the information provided by Benjamin's other soldiers, Might knows that something is off about Kurapika and that he almost certainly does not possess a standard affinity because the interactions don't make sense if he did. Of course, we know that this mystery is Kurapika's ability to switch affinities between Conjurer and Specialist when activating his Scarlet Eyes. Balsamico Might doesn't know these specifics, but he knows enough to fear Kurapika in a way that no one else currently does. And another thing that makes Might so dangerous is that he's extremely humble. When speaking to Benjamin about the Hunter Association, he states that they have a much richer history of Nen use and wisely speculate that every hunter on board knows Nen better than they do. Whereas Benjamin himself is far too proud to make any admission of inferiority like that. He can't, or I guess I should say he refuses to recognize when he's outclassed, which means that he can't focus on what his true strengths are, which is recognized by Might, who believes that the hunter's advantage in Nen is balanced out by their near complete ignorance of Karkian internal affairs. Because Nen is only one front in this contest, and another very important front is navigating Karkian politics as well as the legal system. He's in quite an interesting spot for the leader of a private army. He knows he's outgunned, he can't go in by force, so what Might's decided to focus on is information warfare. And as for being a Nen user himself, we've not seen Balsamico Might engage in Nen outside of him being able to see Benjamin's Guardian Spirit Beast. And so we have no real understanding of his personal proficiency as a Nen user. However, even if he is on the lower end of the aura and ability spectrum, his degree of intelligence makes him one of the least desirable opponents aboard the Black Whale. And I would currently equate Might to someone like Henry of the Jiyu family, because he possessed a relatively low quantity of aura, however he was able to use it so precisely and strategically that he's able to take down anyone in his path with pigeons alone. And also we should mention this. It is very much not out of the question to think that Balsamico might be another child of Beyond Netera. When it comes to figuring out Beyond's planted cursed children, Benjamin's faction is the most difficult because everyone around him is an Nen user. It's heavily speculated but not confirmed that Bobby Minor is one of the Beyondlets for reasons that we've talked about in other videos. Potentially the weak curse within Benjamin's faction, but there should be at least one other. And Might very well could be that one other. And if he is, then that means that we're in a very troubling position right now. I mean, I say where, not necessarily where. Someone is in a troubling position. Because as we've discussed with Prince Benjamin, every month is Pride Month, and if Benjamin were to lose the grounding provided by Might, I would go so far as to say that he completely loses his chance to win this contest. Remember Might's assessment of Prince Benjamin. He's impulsive and prefers shortcuts, so he tends to be misunderstood. But if we readily reason with him and offer information, he always makes sound judgments. So what happens when no one is there to reason with him and offer him information? Do Benjamin's judgments become unsound? I think they might, which is an unintentional pun, but there's a great interaction that this duo have where Benjamin says, "Wait and see isn't my style," to which Might replies, "But it would be wise." And so Benjamin decided to be patient and wait like a very good boy he is. But the issue here is that it's not just Benjamin, it is the entire faction that needs Might's leadership. He is the true captain steering the ship and holding a lot of very eager young men back from making very poorly thought out decisions. Might had to beat the concept of patience into Rihan, and he also had to correct Conjadol's assessment of the Hulkenberg situation, whilst Benjamin sat there with nothing of use to offer to the conversation. So this is one of the lesser focused conflicts because there's about a gazillion of them going on. But Kurapika's mental battle against Benjamin's faction is almost exclusively a contest against Might himself. The rest of the faction, including Benjamin himself, are intelligent and proficient, but the only one that can fight on Kurapika's mental level is Balsamico Might. Which brings us to our current situation and the very real possibility that we're going to lose Might. In chapter 402, Might believes that the biggest threat to Benjamin is Prince Hulkenberg after he made Shikaku commit suicide. And so Might has taken it upon himself to assassinate Hulkenberg as a matter of urgency, which sounds like an uncharacteristically bad idea for Might. Because this whole video I've been pointing out how his main strength is how he manages to restrain Prince Benjamin from acting with incomplete information. However, now Might is doing the exact same thing after being spooked by Hulkenberg's Nen ability. Might is attempting to assassinate Hulkenberg without the slightest understanding of his ability. We've even seen Might ponder what it could be, and he hasn't even come close to the answer yet, which means that it's very possible that he'll be caught off guard and fall victim to it. With that said, Might does know one very important thing, and I think it's this that's guiding this judgment. Might knows that whatever ability Hulkenberg has is impossible to defend against, which we know is true. Possession Arrow is an unblockable attack. So I think this is where Might's sense of desperation comes from. Because again, it's about family, and up against an attack that no one can defend against, Might may see taking action himself as the best and even only way to accomplish this assassination, rather than continuing to sacrifice his precious brothers. It's also entirely possible that Might is planning to sacrifice himself in this attempt, because he'll be using an airborne weapon fatal to anyone who breathes it in at the epicenter. And you know what, just on that, this weapon is known as TSK-17, and a very interesting meta thing about this is that in the original Japanese, TSK-17 is written on the box that Might pulls out, but in the official English translation, they've chosen to black out this writing. And I have a vague idea of why they did this. At first, I thought it might be because this is a real weapon, something very sensitive and easily Googled, but then I Googled it and found nothing. But my current thought is that the name has been censored because it sounds and acts a bit too similar to a certain something 19, and TSK-17 even shows up as flu symptoms initially, so Viz may have just seen it as safer to censor the name to avoid any potential controversy. In any case, this weapon causes death within 12 hours, and this attempt already appears to have been carried out off screen, at least as presented to us, because the day after we see Might plotting, we are informed that Hulkenberg has fallen unconscious, which probably means that one of two things has happened. The first is that Might's attempt was successful and Hulkenberg is about to die imminently, with no one around him realizing because everything looks like simple flu symptoms. Meanwhile, the second option is that because a rumbling was reported, Might failed his assassination attempt and Hulkenberg has fallen unconscious after using Possession Arrow to take control of Might's body. And the third option, I know I said there were only two, but I lied. Don't ever trust strange men on the internet. But option number the third is that both 1 and 2 happened. Might was successful in administering the TSK-17 to Hulkenberg, and Hulkenberg, knowing that he's about to die, has used Possession Arrow to transfer his consciousness into Might's body. Either way, this was quite the gambit. Because if Benjamin loses Might, then mark my words, he has lost his opportunity to win the succession contest. And it will be quite a quick spiral of self-inflicted mistakes, leading Benjamin down the path of bitter, bitter defeat.